Coming up next on Public Access TV is Fan to Fan, the book game, where we look at the game of publishing books. Today, our guest is Lynne Damianos, whose Framingham-based publishing business, Damianos Book Publishing in Saxonville, has helped numerous writers get their books into print. Stay tuned. This won't be wordy, but it could make you a writer. Welcome to Fan, the book game version. I'm your host, Dave Hornfischer, a book fan, and I'm excited to look at the game of book publishing, where we talk to people who got their book ideas into print and those who help them do it. Today I'm pleased to welcome one of those people who helps them do it, Lynne Damianos, and Lynne will talk about some of the current efforts through her Framingham-based publishing business, Damianos Publishing, who works with writers to get their books into print. We'll focus on two recent books, Sealed with a Kiss, the World War II Love Letters of 2nd Lieutenant Paul E. Roberts by Paula Bernice Roberts, and When the World Feels a Little Scary, Dealing with Difficult Feelings by Gia Susi. Lynne, welcome back. It's great to have you again on Fan to Fan, and you do a lot for people to make books, and so it's, why don't you give us a little overview of how all this comes together?
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be back here. How does this come together? Well, basically there are a lot of people that have great ideas for books and they don't know where to start, or they may have a manuscript and don't know what the next step would be as far as to get their book published. So I offer a hybrid publishing service, which means that it's a little bit of traditional, a little bit of do-it-yourself, and I basically tailor what clients need to them. So they don't have to buy a package of anything. They get editing or design or the bits and pieces that will make their book come to life.
We've got an image here of a bunch of the books on the screen that I guess your business has done, as well as a lot more. I know we had the Civil War story here with Tom Ellis. That book's right in back of you, and that was pretty amazing, all of what he did. And then you've got other ones where, like children's book, The Hearts That Fell Out of the Sky, and a new one, Looking East, right? So. And
that's going to be published actually just this week. It's actually not available quite yet, so that's exciting.
Yeah, so it's a wide variety of stuff that you do. Well, let's sort of stimulate. Do you have a philosophy of the types of books that you like to work with, or does the authors kind of drive that?
Well, the authors drive that. However, our goal is to help authors bring their books to life and leave a legacy. People come to us not because they want to make a lot of money. I mean, that would be great, but they really want to leave a mark in the world, tell a story that's important to them, leave a story or a memoir about their life or one of their loved ones' lives.
So there's a bunch of ways a person can get a book published. Where does your business kind of fit in that world of book publishing?
Well, there are people that don't want to do it themselves, and yet they can't get a literary agent through a traditional publisher. So we will help them navigate and offer in-between services. So we will offer editing, design, marketing, having their book available online, that type of thing. So I do all the project management for every step of the way.
So you pull together sort of a team of experts.
Yes.
So who are some of your contractors? You want to give your subcontractors, I guess I'd call them.
Well, our editor is Brett Peruzzi of Peruzzi Communications. He's based in Framingham, and he's a writer. He's a poet himself. He's a wonderful editor, and he also helps with marketing. So he really helps in a lot of different ways. And then we have Rob Levine of Levine Design, also in Framingham, and he designs many other things besides books, so logos, other types of graphics. So he can bring in a whole package to help with the book process.
So then you have to get to the printer. Do you use the same printer all the time, or?
We do. We are using the second largest print-on-demand printer in the United States. They are called Bridgeport National Bindery in Agawam, and their sister company, Silver Street Media, is a distributor. Okay. So they're the ones that get the books online and help us with online sales.
So we use the term print on demand. How does that kind of work? I mean, do you start out by printing a small number, or it's kind of, you're not printing a big inventory of books then that end up in a warehouse?
Right, that's the beauty of this. So the author is not responsible for ordering a lot of books unless they want to. Usually an author will order a stack of books for book signings and to give to family and friends, that type of thing. but the rest of the books are printed on demand. So Jane Doe goes and orders a book from Silver Street Media or Amazon. It's printed, one at a time per order and shipped directly to that person. So the author doesn't have to be responsible for a stack of books in a warehouse.
And they never touch the book.
Right. And then they also receive
one email.
Right. And then they will receive a royalty for sales from online sales.
Oh, okay. So they get the royalty directly through them then.
Yes.
They're in effect like their own agent.
Well, our
I mean, they pay you a fee, obviously.
Our distributor takes care of all that, and then I sort out the royalties for the authors, and then it comes through me.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at a couple of two recent efforts that you have. This first one we mentioned before, Sealed with a Kiss, the World War II love letters of Lieutenant Paul E. Roberts by Paula Bernice Roberts. And this guy wrote hundreds of letters to his fiancée, Bernice. Now, am I suspecting that might have been the mother of Paula Bernice?
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, Paula Roberts is the daughter of Bernice and Paul.
Okay.
And so she discovered these letters after her father had passed away. And the shocking thing is that she saw her father very differently. She did not see this romantic, touching kind of guy that was evident from these letters. And she was just stunned. Her husband, Stanley, transcribed all the letters. He read them and he typed them up. And then Paula put them together into the book that we have today.
So hundreds means 200, 300? Is it? Well, this is the book right here. It's not a very thick book, but
well, there were
a lot more than you then got into the book.
Right. Some of them were somewhat redundant, so they chose the ones that had more action having to do with the war or something going on personally with Paul and Bernice's lives, that kind of thing.
So there's a lot of war history in here too.
Yes. I mean, he was really right there on the front lines.
And he was in Europe and.
Yes. And it's just very well put together. We kept the actual letters as they were. So if there was a typo or there was funny punctuation, we left it exactly the way the letters were written.
Would it be fair to ask you to read one?
I think you need to read it for yourself.
Oh, okay. But how long are the letters? Are they typically?
Some are short and some are longer.
Yeah.
And most of them are coming from Paul to Bernice, because a lot of times they had the letters coming in the opposite direction had to be destroyed for security purposes.
Oh, right. So some of them are X'd out and blanked out and by the censors, right? Huh. So he was in Poland, did I read somewhere? Or
he
Germany?
was in a variety of different countries. And
was his life in danger at some point?
Of course,
yes.
Yeah,
okay.
And he was injured. He had shrapnel that stayed with him for the rest of his life when he came back. But quite an amazing story.
Wow. So how did Paula find you? Is she local or?
She's in Needham, and she found me because somebody else in Needham had written a book also about war, the Civil War, and she knew about Jan Drake and her book, so she looked us up because of that. And
what did you really have to do to help Paula? Some of your all your authors kind of need different services. What was her particular need?
Well, one is to help her consider how to organize the book, how to call out some of the redundant letters, and then also look for different artifacts that might be used in graphics in the book. In fact, on the cover, there's actually some medals that were her father's, and they were scanned, the actual medals. They're not just some stock image, so they're the real thing. And that was kind of exciting. She had so much material. We had to actually edit it down, which was tough to do.
Oh yeah,
when you want to include everything.
Yeah, that looks like a Purple Heart, I guess, isn't it? Yeah, wow. So that's because he was injured, I guess, right? And so, what's the audience for this book? Somewhere I read that it's been called a life-changing World War II book. It was listed among others, I guess, that were that way. So, who do you think is going to want to buy this? Is it?
I would say anybody that's interested in the history of World War II. Anybody that is interested in how a relationship could survive a story such as that. Really, it has a broad audience.
Yeah.
Interestingly, about Paula, she has other family members who have very interesting stories having to do with whaling and all sorts of other things. So she may have a few more books coming along her
Well,
way.
that would be exciting. And she's going to know where to turn to have them done.
She really put her all into this book.
And this is available on Amazon and
Amazon and silverstreetmedia.com. And she's doing a lot of speaking engagements. She was featured on Fox TV News, and she's really getting some broad acknowledgement for her.
Well, that's great.
work.
Has she done anything at Barnes & Noble or anything like that locally? Or?
She's working on it. There's a lot of also independent bookstores that she's talking to.
Great. Well, let's move on to the second book, which is a lot different than this one. This is a much shorter book. It's like called When the World Feels a Little Scary. I mean, that's sort of every day, isn't it? But this is a book that's going to help children and parents deal with scary situations. Is that the idea?
Yes. And those scary situations have really changed over the years. We have lockdowns in schools. We have things like that we didn't used to have in the past. And it's a kind of a feel-good book about dealing with scary feelings and how no matter what, we're loved and there are people that can help you, that type of thing. So it's a great way to start conversations between young people and parents or other adults.
So these are all in kind of chapters type stories. And, is there a theme to the kind of the types of stories it is? Was it based on some questions that she had heard, or how did she kind of pick the scary stuff?
Well, I believe she has 2 young kids, and she gets a lot of questions herself.
Okay.
So it's really one story that flows from one type of question to another, and throughout the children are reminded that they are loved by their parents, by their teachers, etc. And what's really great is that the illustrations were done by a local illustrator, Marianne Orlando, in Framingham, and they're somewhat whimsical, so they kind of lighten up the heavy subject.
I can show one of them here by puts the camera on. Oh, look at this. You want to put shine on closely up on this one?
So they show diversity. They don't feel heavy, even though it's a heavy subject.
Where do I go? When I go to the doctor to get my vaccines at my checkup, I feel nervous. I can close my eyes and think of something that makes me happy, like my favorite toy or my favorite ice cream.
Ice cream is good.
I was telling the nurse that yesterday when I got my shot. No, but that's true. Oh, look at this one. It's time to go to bed in the dark. I feel scared.
And Gia is a teacher herself. She's based in Canton, so she's another local person as well.
Yeah, those are really terrific. I think there's probably a pretty good market for that if you could do that through PTA or something. Or
yes.
Through schools. Is that sort of the idea? Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, with all the school counselors and that probably would be
It's a hot topic right now.
So how did she find you?
I believe Gia found us by Google. Google is our friend.
Okay. Find me a publisher locally, huh? And so we talked about the audience. We have a picture of Gia here. So let's talk about a few of the other projects that you might be working on. You told me about a project you're working on now for First Parish in Framingham. That's the Unitarian Church?
It is. Right down the street. We are working on a book project that will be a fundraiser to help with the good community work that First Parish does. So helping people in need, creating community. There are a lot of people out there that are struggling with the pandemic of loneliness, which is really a big thing right now, especially since the actual pandemic occurred. A lot of people have kind of receded into their shell. There are people that have lost loved ones, etc. And our minister, Reverend Aaron Stockwell-Wisman, decided to make the year's theme about the epidemic of loneliness. So the book, the tentative title of the book is Together, Writings and Artwork Dealing with Loneliness, Solitude, and Community, and how as individuals, if we can share our stories, we can actually build community and reach out to each other as a way of help.
It sounds like the adult version of Gia's book.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah. We just finished editing all of the art, well, I shouldn't say editing, jurying all the artwork and the written words that have been submitted. We have poetry, prose, and various artwork. And now the next step will be editing the book. It will be available in late fall, probably around Thanksgiving time.
And try and sell it beyond locally?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We invited basically anyone in the Metro West area to contribute. So we have people that have contributed from many different places.
And you've got a pretty good sized team that's working on this book. We've got an image coming up here of the team.
We do. Many people are from First Parish, but there are several who are not. The person in the top left, Brett Peruzzi, he's the gentleman that typically does the editing and marketing for the books to begin with. And there's the whole team.
You want to run across some of them? I see you in there.
Sure. So next up is Greg Wells. He is actually project managing the whole thing along with me, and he's a juror. Brett Peruzzi was a juror also of the written word. Reverend Aaron is basically helping us with the whole project, helping to promote it, and he also submitted some writing for that. I'm the publisher and a juror. Joanne Sarkar is the book designer. Karen Greenberger is a juror of images. Mary Ann Orlando is the illustrator, and she's also submitted some of her own personal images. Margie Sisitsky is a juror. Eve Benda is helping with marketing and overseeing our marketing team. And Glenn Ickler, who is a writer, has submitted some works of his own, and he is a juror as well.
Oh, well, that's a
good group.
That's quite a group, yes. So you get together and have team meetings on this, or is it?
Well, a lot of them have been via Zoom or phone calls, etc.
Are they all local?
They are all local, yes.
Okay.
Greater Metro West area.
So is there any other books you've got in process here that you want to just give a quick mention to, or
I'm
that
working.
you've done recently? We've got 2 or 3 of them in back of you that we mentioned. But,
Well, Tom Ellis, who writes about the Civil War, has he just published another couple of books about the Civil War where he goes into different communities and does a genealogical study there. And so he's working on some of those. I'm working on a memoir of my own father's.
Oh, wow.
Trying to wrap that up. And I just spoke to a woman who is a retired nun, and she has a book of short stories that she has written. So I'm hoping that we will get to work with her on that.
Amazing collection of stuff. And I know I've had a bunch of your authors on in my other shows here, and one of whom she moved to Arizona, the one, The Hearts That Fell Out of the Sky. I love the image behind that book. Okay, so when you put all this kind of stuff together, where's the risk in this for you and the writer? I guess the writer has to commit to hiring you and a certain amount of that, right? And
right. So basically, the main risk is if the books don't sell or don't sell as many as we would like. The author is paying to publish, so the author is putting some significant money into doing this type of thing. And
does that vary quite a bit from one to another? I mean, could that be as little as $500 or as much as $3,000 or something like that?
That's probably the perfect range.
Oh, okay.
Because some
things. A wild guess, but.
Well, some things are much further along. Some authors have a design for their cover already, or they may have already created the entire interior, and we're just designing the cover. I think the biggest issue we run into are authors that are shy or unable to toot their own horn because they really can help themselves by promoting the book, and we will give them tools to do that, and we will also do some of that ourselves.
So so for an author to engage you, I guess you just have to pretty much find your website and call you, right?
So they call or email, and typically we will ask to see a manuscript or just an outline of what their goals are or what their thoughts are about the project. And then I would provide an estimate based on what we see, both for myself, project managing it, author, the editing, and the design.
We got a couple more minutes here. Why don't we go back and just talk a little bit about these 2 books here, the Sealed with a Kiss. The stories in here must have been rather heart-wrenching in some cases. I mean, were some of these letters written from battles themselves? Was he in a foxhole or something, or were some written from hospital beds, or?
All of the above, and they were all signed with Sealed with a Kiss, hence the name of the book.
I see one here, when he was in England right near the end of the war. I'm feeling pretty good. We just heard President Truman's speech over the radio. He sounded very good to me. That's kind of, I'm just kind of skimming this. How do you like this writing paper? Some class, isn't it? I picked it up in a bombed German house. I don't know if the censor they'll let this through or not, but I really don't see why they shouldn't. Let me know if it comes through, okay?
Well, they had to be careful about not tying things back to where they were actually located.
Oh, for sure. No, I know. Another day on the range over, only 3 more to go. This getting up every morning at 3:30 and going to bed at 10:30 is getting me down. It's just so personal. And,
it really is.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing thing to me is that, Paula was pretty close with her father, but to not see the side of him while she was growing up was really incredible. Mm-hmm. It was really eye-opening for her.
That certainly led to some of the some kind of things in the world that would make me feel scary if this was written back in the 1940s. I can only imagine it would have been the things might have been quite a bit different.
Well, I think we all read history books, but when you have a personal perspective, it really changes things. Mm-hmm. Makes it a lot more interesting.
So, are there any particular books that have really got your own attention as you worked on gone through these? It seems like your business has probably done what, about 100 books now, or more than a couple?
That's just about right. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there is a woman named Connie Bean who just wrote a memoir at the age of 95, and unfortunately she has recently passed away. But she was a very involved with women's rights and medical issues, and it was an incredible story. And her book was called 9 Lives and Counting. And just before it was published, she said, I need to write one more chapter because she got COVID and had survived that. And she wanted to include that. That was fascinating. And I learned a lot about local history because she grew up in Wayland. And I learned a lot about things that I didn't know. So that was an interesting book.
So your own background was, I knew you first as a photographer. Mm-hmm. And have you done any books on photography or anything like that yourself?
I've written a book about technical aspects of photography, but the 2 books that I've published were historical and photo books about 2 mills in Framingham.
Yeah, and I know you've done some work with the Framingham History Center on some of their projects.
Mm-hmm. History is very interesting to me. Mm-hmm. It wasn't when I was in high school, but it's become interesting now.
Local history especially. Are they working on anything new through you, or?
They have a couple of new books that they published elsewhere about Framingham historical things, and one of them has to do with a soldier that grew up in Jim Parr's home in South Framingham, and he's writing a story about that.
I had Jim and Kevin Swope on my show when they talked about some of those, and I think they mentioned you, in fact, when they were talking about it. But these other, tell me a little more about Looking East. You mentioned that was a book that just came out.
Well, it's not completely out yet. Okay. I just today registered it with the Library of Congress, but it will be coming out within the next 2 weeks. Walter McLennan in Holliston wrote a book of short stories and reflections on life. And it's a very interesting combination of things. There's drawings of his that he's included, some photographs, and again, some short stories, and kind of lessons in life and his outlook on life.
So that's going to be published through and available on Amazon pretty soon.
Yes.
Most of these books are probably all on Amazon, I would guess, right?
Most of them are on Amazon and Silver Street Media. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about the role of Amazon and the sort of the death of the small bookstore? I mean, there's fewer and fewer of them. I know there's a good one in Westboro and one in Wellesley, and the ones in Framingham have pretty much disappeared. And the Barnes and Noble changed their facility. And
right. Well, I think Amazon has done a great job at making books and other things more accessible to people, especially the people that don't have an easy way to drive around and go shopping, that type of thing. I do think that the independent bookstores that have survived are actually doing fairly well because they're offering kind of a niche experience where you can come and have some coffee, meet the authors, read some interesting books that might not be as noticeable, online type of thing. So I do think that a few of those bookstores are remaining strong, Wellesley, Concord, Tatnick Bookseller, that type of thing. And I hope that they continue to be because they give the authors a great opportunity for book signings and meeting people one-to-one.
Book signings can be difficult because you have to promote them, and lots of times you only get 1 or 2 people to show up, and other times you never know. But
well, what some bookstores do, like Hummingbird Books in Chestnut Hill, they'll have a group book signing. So they'll have many authors come together at one time. And so it's kind of cross-pollination, and I think that can work nicely.
Well, that's a good idea. Well, anyway, we're winding down the time here of our half-hour discussion, but is there anything that I kind of should have asked you that I didn't, or more you want to say about any of these particular books that didn't come together?
Well, I know that you're working on a book, so I want to keep you encouraged to keep going on that.
Yes, right. My wife had an aunt who was very involved in, she was a nurse, and she had experience in Newfoundland, and she was in World War II, and we found a lot of original papers from her diaries and stuff like that. So I have an author who's been on this show, Tom Hall, who's working on that for me. In fact, I'm going to have Tom on. Tom's done another book that's a similar type book about his own family. So, you can go back and take your genealogy of your family and go back to when the Damianoses first landed in America, or maybe your grandmother's side or something. And that makes an amazing story.
It really does.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to read that.
Okay. Well, we have to get it done first, but it's a lot of material, and pulling it when you have a lot of material, and you alluded to it with this one, and culling out just what it is that you want and getting it down. And when you had to write, I remember having to write a 5-page paper, and I had 10 pages. Well, what do I take out? And when it's going to be a book, it's the same thing.
Right. Because no matter how interested somebody is, if the book is just too much, it's going to be tough. And plus, it's going to be expensive to produce. So by whittling it down to the best parts, that's really an important part of the process.
Photos and pictures make a book expensive too, don't they? I had one of your writers on here who said she wished she didn't spend so much on images and pictures. It drove color. Even color, right?
Well, if they're black and white, it does not add to the cost of the book. It's the same as printing a text page. We have a newer process of printing color now, which is an inkjet process, which is much less expensive. So you could still, like this Looking East book is all in color, and it's actually pretty reasonable. But if you have a very thick book that's all in color, it does add up.
Well, those Civil War books are certainly major tomes.
But those are all
the beautiful cover.
Right, but the interior is all black and white.
Right.
So it keeps the cost down. And some of his books are 300 pages.
Well, thank you so much for coming by, Lynn. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I've met some of your authors in here, and you're really doing a great service for people who have ideas that aren't going to be the next $50 million book deal, but are significant and great stories that need to be told. And that's one of the reasons that we do Fan to Fan, the book game, is to promote this kind of book. Because people always wonder, how do I get this thing done? And every time I have an author on, that's something I really like to emphasize. So come back and watch us. We're on 4 times a week in Framingham during the week at 8:30 at night, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. We're on Saturday morning at 7:30 if you like to get up early and watch TV. And we also put all of our shows up on YouTube. Look for Fan to Fan Hornfischer, and you'll find all of these book shows as well as a bunch of the local sports interviews. So keep watching, keep enjoying books, and check out these 2 fun books that Lynn's put together. Good night.